no, this is not what we do. This is all the wrong things coming together. Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. This is Boost My Build, the series where we take your PC build list, we tear them up, we put them back together, and massively increase your performance. And we've got two amazing builds for this episode. In fact, we're going to do something a little different. The $1,000 price point has been an absolute hair puller for most PC builders. They can't figure out last generation, this generation, what should they build? So we're going to take two different builds, one at $900 and $1,100 to see how different those price points can be. Remember, if you get value out of this video, give it a like because it makes a huge difference to the channel. And of course, subscribe, click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. With that, let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by Micro Center, my favorite tech place on earth. Great news! Micro Center has 26 US store locations with Charlotte, North Carolina opening in early 2024. It's monitor madness at Micro Center with awesome deals like this 1440p 165Hz HP gaming monitor for just $199, or go super ultra wide 240Hz with the Samsung G9 for just $899, or grab huge discounts on PC parts like the Ryzen 7800X 3D for just $349. Want to get into 3D printing? New in-store customers can get the Creality Ender 3 S1 for just $149. Check out the great deals using the links in the video description. We've got Hollow. Hollow says, "Hi Jason, love your videos and I've been watching for a while as I've been learning more about PC building. They're currently building their nephew's first gaming PC. They're trying to build a budget AM5 computer for 1080p gaming. What are we doing here? With a fairly open upgrade path for the future. Yikes, there is no budget 1080p AM5 PC. That's just all those terms don't go together. It's really confusing. I can only imagine what this build's gonna look like. He loves games like Fortnite, Minecraft, run great on older hardware, by the way. He also loves RGB. My computer wants his to be pretty as well. Hey, we can definitely take care of that. From Canada, all right. And trying to keep the budget around $1,500 Canadian, which is about $1,100 USD. All right, I'm a little worried about this one, but let's see what you got. Oh, no, this is not what we do. This is all the wrong things coming together. What am I talking about? I'm talking about you spent $1,370. Now that's Canadian. That's just a little over $1,000 USD. And we got a PC that, while technically it would all work together just fine, an absolute disaster in terms of its level of performance for the amount of money that we're spending here. Let's start off, where else the GPU? Now, if I gave you $1,000 to build a gaming PC and you came back with the RTX 4060 8GB GPU, I would probably pull all of my hair out. This is a terrible GPU for any level of gaming, really. It's overpriced, it underdelivers. If you want NVIDIA, the RTX 3060 12GB is a far better option out there. It's only got slightly less performance and just got 12 gigs of VRAM. Now listen, I know that your nephew said that they mostly play Minecraft and Fortnite. Those are not hugely VRAM sensitive games, but as they get older, maybe they want to play something like Alan Wake 2 on release and at 1440p, and they're like, oh, this card's just not going to cut the mustard, doesn't load the textures, my game's stuttering and crashing. What the heck's going on here is because you don't have enough VRAM. 8 gigs of VRAM is not enough, especially $1,000. If you were spending $500 US, I'd say, hey, 8 gigs is probably the best that you're going to be able to do, but you're going to be able to play 1080p games and turn some things down. You're spending double that and you're getting the same amount of VRAM, just not going to work in 2024. I think this is a really big mistake. I know you wanted to go with the Ryzen 5 7600 or 7600X. You wanted to go AM5 for future upgradability, but I think what we ended up doing is kind of boomeranging ourselves because we're spending so much on the CPU platform, and the Ryzen AM5 platform is not cheap. If you want cheap, go with something else like a 12th gen Intel or Ryzen 5000, and that will give you far better price to performance. And you don't need a CPU like this for the level of GPU that you have. We could go with a much stronger GPU instead. Ryzen 7600, amazing gaming CPU for mid-range gaming PC builds with much faster graphics cards, but right now we're just spending a lot of money and not really getting the performance we need. The cooler is absolutely adequate. Any budget tower air cooler is fine with the Ryzen 7600 or 7600X, and the Thermalright Peerless Assassin X Refined. Can we streamline the naming a little bit? Because you got like 17 of these coolers that basically do all the same thing with 17 different names out there, but they're all basically around $20 US. This is $33 Canadian. Motherboard, I do like the ASRock B650M PG Riptide. In terms terms of the US market, it hasn't really fared that well. It's really kind of a little bit too expensive up there. And I've been recommending some of the other boards instead. But if this is a good board in the Canadian market, go for it. We've used this in builds. 2 thumbs up. 199 Canadian. I hate the RAM. Absolutely hate it. I have no problem with Kingston Fury Beast. They make good modules, but we do not want DDR5 6000 CL40 RAM. This is slow. The CL40 is slow. And Ryzen 7600 is memory sensitive, and really there's no price savings. I know this is hard to believe, but there's no price savings by going with slower DDR5 because they're not selling that into the DIY PC market. They're selling it to laptop and OEM and everything. So these kits cost almost as much as the fast one, so just go ahead and buy the fast one. Drive, I like the Western Digital Blue SN580. This is their updated version of the SN550 and then the SN570. So this is going to be your basic HMB processed, no DRAM on it, but you don't really need it. It's going to be that kind of budget SSD NVMe that you're looking for in a lot of kind of more budget-oriented builds. The case, I'm not that familiar with the Game Dias Talos E2 Elite. I'm not going to comment that much on it. If you like this particular case, it looks okay. It looks like there's basically a side slit here, but the front is glass. I don't know what the airflow on that looks like. We are not using really that high heat part, so I think we probably get away with it, and especially if you decided, because I know aesthetics were important, that this is the case you want, well, $70, we'll go ahead and go with it. For the PSU, I'm not familiar with the Corsair RM650. This RM650 that I know is an older power supply from like 2020 or 2021. I see this as the 2023 update. I'll have to check it on the PSU Cultist list. It looks a little expensive for 650 watts, and I don't know if it's A tier or B tier rating. I think the old RM650 was either B or C tier. I've been recommending the RM650E. That's a newer version of this power supply that's A tier rated. So let's see if we need this. 650 watts, you know, it's probably appropriate for this build level and this budget level in terms of the GPUs that we're going to want to put in here. So maybe we'll use this. All told, for $1,370 Canadian, about, you know, a little over $1,000 US, we're just not getting the level of performance here. I could destroy this, absolutely destroy this build with like $800 US, $800 US. I could destroy this level of performance. So we need to pump up the volume here. Your nephew deserves an amazing gaming PC. I called this the $1,500 Canadian or $1,100 USD 1440p gaming PC because we're going to be playing games at 1440p. Forget 1080p for this budget. In fact, I don't want people thinking about 1080p again unless you're only spending about $500. For this budget, we are going to absolutely destroy games at 1440p. And in fact, I finished out at $1,487 Canadian. So that's less than $1,100 USD. I'm super excited about this because it's going to give you the upgradability that you were looking for on AM5, and it's going to give you insane amounts of performance for your nephew's game, and they're going to feel like they can play any title. Let's jump into what else, the GPU. Honestly, it's tough in this price point, but I decided to go with the RX 7700 XT 12 gigabyte GPU. This GPU has gotten serious price cuts over about the last couple of months, and it's finally coming to line where I thought it needed to be in order to be a competitive offering. In fact, in our last GPU market update, I identified this as one of the best values right now at 1440p at that lower price. Finally, AMD realized that they got to sell this at a decent price. I will say, if you're looking for an NVIDIA alternative, the RTX 4060 Ti, 16 gigabyte, but you're going to spend about another $50 USD for that, and that would put us over our budget, and as we're about to see, the performance just isn't there. This is the Tom's Hardware review of the RX 7600 XT, so it's got a lot of the GPUs that we're looking for, and this is relatively fresh data. I will say I went through this suite of games. This really leans pretty heavily towards NVIDIA. It kind of feels a little biased towards NVIDIA, but you can look through this yourself and tell me if you think I'm wrong on that. I'll leave a link to it down in the video description. Even so, look at this. The RTX 4060, about 61 average FPS, 49 on the 1% lows. The 7700 XT, 90 average FPS. That's 50% more FPS, 50% more FPS for the same price basically, and 71 on the 1% lows. So it's 1% lows or even like 20% higher. I can't even do the math there. You do the math for me. Than the RTX 4060. Absolutely insane. As an alternative, if you are looking at the 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte, it's quite a bit behind the 7700 XT. And at this level, I think the 12 versus 16, I'm not as cautious about the 12 gigabytes given what we're spending for this GPU as it would be if you were going like the RTX 4070 Super versus the 7800 XT. But if you decide you want more VRAM with less performance, you could go with the 4060 Ti. Just also know it's also a more expensive card, which is also kind of hard to swallow. That's why I do like the 7700 XT here at 1440p. Let's punch through the rest of the build. Honestly, we stuck with the Ryzen 7600X. Doesn't make any sense right here to drop to a lower level of CPU performance because those CPUs like the Ryzen 5000 and the locked 12th, 13th, 14th gen Intel CPUs, they all run into a bottleneck at basically any GPU higher than the one we have right now. So pulling from our CPU to put into our GPU doesn't make any sense. We're going to end up GPU bound. So I do like the 7600X. I did note the 7600 is a little cheaper. Seems like it's sold out everywhere though right now. Doesn't matter which of these CPUs you get, but these are great and they're going to give you that AM5 upgradability in the future. For the cooler, any of these budget tower air coolers, and Thermalright makes good ones. There's id Cooling out there. Deepcool makes a lot of them. Any of these is absolutely fine for that Ryzen 7600 or 7600X CPU, and $33 Canadian is a pretty good price. For the motherboard, I swapped out the ASRock PG Riptide board you have. I know that has a little bit more RGB to it. If you want to go ahead and pump a little extra money in there, I just wanted to make sure I definitely hit your budget. So I went with the ASRock B650M ProRS Wi-Fi, which is selling for an insane price, $161. Now that's after the $40 mail-in rebate, but take advantage of that because that's $118 US. I have never seen this board that cheap in the US. I'm kind of jealous. And we use this on our Ryzen 7600, 7800 XT gaming PC build. It's a great board. It's got 3 M.2 slots. It's got Wi-Fi on it, kind of everything you need for a really, really cheap price. For the RAM, I went ahead and got you the same RAM kit that I keep recommending. Just happens that in Canada, it's also one of the cheaper ones. That's the Team Group T-Force Delta DDR5 6000 CO30. If you want to go ahead and find the Kingston Fury Beast modules, just make sure you're getting DDR5 6000 CO30 RAM. I'm going to give you 2 thumbs up. And this is actually $2 cheaper than the kit that you were going to get that was super slow. For the drive, we went with a Western Digital SN580 1 terabyte. I don't know why the picture says 250 gigabyte. The page says 1 terabyte. That's the one we want. $91 Canadian. So really, really good price. There are some slightly cheaper drives out there if you want to shave off at like another $10 Canadian and go with like the Silicon Power A60 or something like that. But this is a great drive. And if you feel good with it, 2 thumbs up. For the power supply, I was just able to find a way better deal out there. I went with the Gigabyte UD750 GM. Yes, I know Gigabyte had some exploding power supplies, but those were not the UD ones. The UD ones are actually quite good. These are B tier rated, 750 watts. It's fully modular. It's not PCIe Gen 5 or the ATX 3.0, but you really don't need that, quite honestly, for this level of build. $99. It's about $30 cheaper than the PSU you were going to get, and we get another 100 watts. All told, $1,487 Canadian, or about just under $1,100 US. We are getting a significantly more performative gaming PC capable of playing all the latest titles at 1440p, importantly, and you're going to get tons more frames. You get 50% more FPS than you were looking at, despite the fact that I felt like that suite of titles really leaned heavily into NVIDIA. And we're going to preserve all that awesome RGB out there, including that in your GameDias case, I got you an extra fan to go in the back as well. So I hope you feel like your build is boosted. We've got Pochita. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I think it's a Japanese anime character. Hi, Jason. As an avid US viewer of your content, I find your videos to be incredibly insightful and intuitive. Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm trying to build a PC for under $1,000 with an extra 100 to spare. Not sure what that means, so I guess we'll find out. For a friend, and they mostly play games like Valorant, Lethal Company, League of Legends, etc. So all kind of competitive titles, right? At 1080p with relatively high FPS. I was wondering if there could be any tweaks to the build in order to get the build under $1,000, namely SSD, micro ATX case, all this other stuff without sacrificing quality and performance. All right, let's see what you got. Yeah. Again, here's another build. I'm just never sure what to say on these builds where, yeah, technically you put it all together, it would go, right? It would go, but just not seeing the level of performance that we should be getting for spending like $1,100. Now listen, it looks like you're going to go ahead and buy a Windows OEM license from Microsoft directly for about $125. You can get an OEM key for a lot less than that. That's where we get all of our keys, but I'll leave that up to you. In the meantime, let's just assume that we do need to buy this $125 highway robbery here. It would basically make our budget around $900 US. And you're already at about $1,000 US. So you're already about $100 more than you want to spend. And I just don't get what we're doing here. Let's start off with the GPU. I kind of like where we start off with the RX 6700 XT 12 gigabyte. I think though, for this price point, could we get something faster? I'm not quite sure. $1,000 is a really tough price point because it's kind of the breaking point between using Ryzen 5000 or Intel 12, 13, 14th locked CPUs, or jumping up to the next tier of performance, which is Ryzen 7000 right now, or unlocked CPUs like the 13600K, 14600K. I do like the 6700 XT 12 gigabyte while you can still get them in the US, $329. This is a pretty long card, so we always want to make sure that our XFX, for whatever reason, they make thinner heat sinks, but their heat sinks are much longer. That's how they kind of spread it out. So I just want to make sure this is going to fit in our case. But overall, I really do like the performance of these GPUs. Here's where things go a little bit off the rails to me. The Ryzen 5600X has never been worth the price premium you're paying. You're paying almost like 20 bucks right now to get the X. And what does the X give you? A slight bump in frequency. And we're going to turn on Precision Boost anyway with a Ryzen 5600. We get a lot more performance. And did you know that the i5 12600KF is now down? It's only like $8 more than the 5600X. So if we're looking for is a bump in CPU power, especially if we're going to play games, we might get CPU bound in some of them, especially if we're pumping out tons and tons of frames at 1080p in these hyper competitive shooters. We might look at like a 12600KF instead for about the same price. The cooler, look, I like the Thermalright Peerless Assassin. It's a great cooler, way overkill for the 5600X. You could actually just go ahead and use the included stock cooler. If you need to save some money, a Budget Tower air cooler would also be great. Now, the one advantage of doing this is it's not that much more than a Budget Tower air cooler. And when you do upgrade to like a 5700X3D, 5800X3D, this cooler is going to be more than enough for those CPUs as well. So you only have to buy it once. That being said, I'm not sure, given that our GPU level maybe needs to come up a little bit. For the motherboard, we massively overspent with the B550 Mortar Max Wi-Fi. Look, this is a great motherboard, but $160 right now. This board is definitely not worth it. Look, it has upgraded audio on it, which is nice, but there's other boards out there that we can get with upgraded audio on them that cost $50 less. And when we're working with this budget, $50 more would almost get us to the next GPU tier. So just kind of hard to justify the expense. Similarly with a case, an $80 micro ATX case, it only comes with 2 included fans. So you're going to have to go buy another fan, probably at least another $10 if you want RGB, or $12 if you want RGB there. I like the Landcool 205 mesh in terms of its overall performance. And if you have the money for this level of aesthetics, go for it. But again, at this budget level, I think we're really trying to save some money and pump it into our GPU or possibly our CPU for more performance. For the PSU, this is a pretty good unit. It's speculatively rated right now on the B tier. PSU Cultils, it just means they haven't fully updated it yet. I think I've seen some reviews that would pretty much confirm it being on the B tier, but double check. $99 though, at 750 watts. The price and the wattage and the PCIe 5.0, ATX 3.0, all makes sense, but we don't need this much power in our build right now. So again, here's another area where we could have saved some money. All told, even with the Windows license taken out of it, about $970, $980. I'm just not seeing the level of performance I would expect for that level of build. Well, this is the huge value, $900 gaming PC, because this is going to give you amazing performance for about $900. In fact, even cheaper than that. Now, I've gone ahead and backed out the Windows license that you had in here so we could just see the cost of the tower itself. I finished out at $866.76, quite a bit cheaper than you were looking at. And I think we got a PC with pretty good performance here and a future upgrade path as well. Let's jump into the GPU because I ended up sticking it out with a 6700 XT 12 gigabyte GPU. Now, there's an argument to be made that what you could do here, and I did go for 12th gen Intel i5 12600KF. As a spoiler alert, I decided to invest a little bit in there since you seem to want a little bit more CPU power. We could have potentially gotten ourselves up to a 7700 XT. However, the CPUs, Ryzen 5000 and everything, they do start to bottleneck right around that 7700 XT. So I figured let's try this instead. And I do like the RX 6700 XT 12 gigabyte GPU. This is a very powerful 1440p GPU. I'm kind of afraid of what happens when it finally goes away because I don't see the value in a lot of the other GPUs, though the 7700 XT, with that price continuing to come down, seems like it's at least positioned to replace it. In terms of overall performance for this GPU, let's just look at the same data we were looking at just a moment ago. Tom's Hardware RX 7600 XT review. This is relatively recent data, although again, I think this suite of games feels like it favors NVIDIA a little bit. You can check out the link in the description, look at the games they're using for their rasterization geomean, and tell me if you think I'm just full of it or not. But 69, well, so let's just call it 70 average FPS with 55 on the 1% lows. That's really, really good for a $329 GPU. Quite a bit more than the 7600 XT, not quite as much as the 7700 XT, but very competitive with a 4060 Ti 16GB, and that GPU costs like what, $120, $130 more. So this is really, really insane value. For the rest of the build, I decided to take advantage of the i5 12600KF. It is $160. I actually saw it, I think, for like $152 the other day. If you're looking for like a Ryzen 5600 build with maybe like a 7700 XT, check out our March best builds. We did exactly that for just a little bit more money, just about $900 US. But this is an insanely performative CPU. Now you are going to need a slightly bigger PSU for this, more power than the 5600. And you're going to need probably a better cooler. You probably get by with a Budget Tower air cooler for it. Does not come with an included stock cooler for good reason. It's got 6 P cores and 4 E cores. It needs a serious cooler, but it's also going to give us quite a bit of performance. About the same as the Ryzen 5600X in terms of gaming, but anything multi-threaded or even in some of those more CPU demanding titles where you're pumping out tons and tons of frames at 1080p in those competitive shooters, it will have a slight edge. For the cooler, I stuck it out with the Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120. I just went with the RGB version because the one you had, for whatever reason, wasn't pulling in a price. The same price as yours, $34. You're set up to drop a 13600K or a 14600K or 14700K, potentially, depending on the board we get, into this build instead in the future for your future upgrade path. And you don't even have to replace the cooler. For the motherboard, you can go a number of different ways. I ultimately kind of hemmed and hawed, and I went with the ASRock B660M Pro RS. Now, this board does not have BIOS flashback, but this is a 12th gen Intel CPU. It will work in this board, no problem. And these boards have been out long enough. They probably even work with 13th gen at this point, though you'd have to have fingers crossed. And if you were wrong, you'd have to return it. That's why I like this board, the 12600KF. You can use this board just fine. Just make sure to update the BIOS to the latest version because the earlier BIOSes had some problems with those 6-core and higher core count CPUs. And just remember to remove the power limits in the BIOS. We go through this in our how to set up a PC guide. So this is going to be a really, really good motherboard to get you started. For the RAM, I decided to kind of boost it up. You went with 3600 CL18. It's the same speed basically as 3200 CL16. This RAM price continues to fall. Right now for $42, you can get a 16GB kit of DDR4 3600 CL16 RAM. 2 thumbs up. We're just going to give ourselves even slightly more performance and $42, the same price that you were going to pay. The drive, I just went with Silicon Power 1 TB. I think you went with the same drive, $60. Really no reason to do anything else at this budget range. Unfortunately, those DRAM drives, they had been almost about the same price, but then with the increase in SSD prices that we've seen the last couple months, again, this was a $38 drive not too long ago. Now it's a $60 drive. You can see the direction that NVMe SSDs are going. This is one reason I keep telling people, don't wait if you want to build a gaming PC. The time is now before storage prices go up, before RAM prices go up. Yes, I know people are like, well, GPU prices might come down a little bit. Yes, they will continue to come down, but will they be canceled out by stuff like this? That's why I would pull the trigger now, and a drive like this is really all you need. For the case, I went Micro ATX. I went with something cheaper here. I went with the Deepcool CC360 ARGB. I like this case quite a bit. $60, got really good airflow, comes with 3 included ARGB fans to it. It's super nice to build in, and honestly, for right now with the promo code for $55, it's really hard to beat. For the power supply, I went with the MSI MPG A750GF. It's $10 cheaper than the one you were looking at. It's also A-tier rated. It's not PCIe Gen 5 or ATX 3.0, so if you want, go ahead and grab that other unit, but that's speculatively on the B tier. This is solidly on the A tier. I just like it for that reason. $89. And this is the power that we're going to need now that we've gone with the 12600KF instead of the Ryzen 5600. So all told, $866.76. I should all just call this the $860, $870 gaming PC. You're going to get an amazingly performative 1440p gaming PC, and it's going to have tons and tons of horsepower for any kind of other multi-threaded work you want to do out there. Or if you are going to do competitive shooters at that 1080p super competitive settings and push tons and tons of frames, this is going to give you the CPU horsepower to do so. And it's going to not cost that much money. So I hope you feel like your build is boosted. Remember, everything is linked down in the video description, so check those links out for pricing and availability in your region. And if you got value out of this video, man, give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel. And of course, subscribe. Click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. What kind of cool content? Like this, our best builds in March 2024. If you're looking for the best Gaming PC Build 2024 list, here you go, $650, $900, and $1,500. Check them out, and we'll catch you on the next one.